Hey, this is my video about colonization of North America and worldviews and stuff like that. So the driving question right now is, what did European settlement mean for all involved? So the two main groups involved in the European settlement of the Americas were the First Nations and the Europeans. If you didn't know, the Europeans went to North America for the first time and claimed the land to themselves, even though the First Nations had been living there for thousands of years already. The First Nations were the most affected by the colonization. The First Nations didn't know anything about the Europeans, were less advanced in technology, and couldn't understand the Europeans because of the language barrier. The Europeans were quite aggressive in their conquest to colonize the Americas. The clash and differences between these two groups made separate worldviews. In two images that you can see, there's a European drawing and the same drawing reinterpreted to a bystander's point of view. The European drawing's on the right and the reinterpreted drawing's on the left, just so you know. I decided to make many changes to the drawing, but there's only three main ones. The first being that I changed the First Nations from having weapons. So you can see, or you probably won't be able to see, but there is two weapons that the First Nations hold in the European point of view. But I thought that wouldn't be likely because the Europeans would probably be the one attacking the First Nations. And the First Nations wouldn't be ready to defend because it'll be like an ambush. So it'll be a surprise, they wouldn't be ready. The second change I made is taking the huge group of First Nations and the decently sized group of Europeans out. You can see in the original there's many First Nations and a decent amount of Europeans. I just did a 1v1 because I thought that would be more realistic from a bystander's point of view. Because maybe you couldn't see the rest of the Europeans, and the First Nations were just minding their own business. They weren't attacking the Europeans. I did this because, like I mentioned earlier, they weren't ready for attack. And the First Nations would likely strategize. The Europeans would likely strategize by only fighting 1, 2, or 3 First Nations at a time, and took the rest of the Europeans out of the photo because they wouldn't need many Europeans with their better technology that's more advanced to take out a few First Nations. And if they encircled the area where the First Nations lived, and they could move fast enough that the First Nations wouldn't have time to react. The third thing I changed about the drawing is the stance of the First Nations, so it doesn't look like they're attacking the Europeans, because again, unrealistic, probably isn't what actually happened, because the Europeans took them by surprise. That's it. Thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed. Please subscribe.